Welcome to your week in review here on WINN FM 98.9 for the period March 31st through April 5th. Making the news last week, Nevis Premier advocates for trade diversification amidst Trump-era tariffs. St. Kitts Nevis ministers address historic trade alliance with Nigeria. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister addresses potential impact of resurgent Trump trade policies. St. Kitts and Nevis eyes acceleration of green energy future after Taiwan visit. Nevis Premier responds to U.S. concerns over Cuban medical program following Rubio's Caribbean tour. Crime rates drop in St. Kitts and Nevis, a promising start to 2025.
St. Kitts and Nevis fire officials in discussion about training opportunities by Anguilla's Aviation Rescue Training Facility.
Now the details. Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, addressed the growing need for trade diversification in St. Kitts and Nevis during a press conference held on March 31, 2025. The Premier highlighted the impact of the Trump administration's America First agenda, particularly the implementation of tariffs on countries that have historically been key import partners for the region. On April 2, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled a swath of new tariffs, some of which affect the Caribbean region. The Federation and other territories have been hit with a 10% tariff, Guyana a 38% tariff. St. Kitts and Nevis also in a trade deficit of over $750 million with the U.S. against the surplus of other countries targeted by the tariffs. Brantley emphasized the importance of exploring new trade relationships with South and Central America.
Priority areas for St. Kitts and Nevis. I am so happy that you mentioned South and Central America, because you're right. We need to develop closer ties with South and Central America as well. And in many instances, they are closer to us than some of the other countries in the Middle East and even in Africa.
He lamented the absence of direct transportation links between Africa and the Caribbean, as well as between South and Central America and the Caribbean.
It is a matter of great regret that we have no direct transportation links between Africa and the Caribbean or between South and Central America and the Caribbean. All that we do here, again, is routed through Miami and then comes down to us.
This, the Premier argued, increases cost and makes the region vulnerable to external economic policies. The Premier also raised concerns about President Trump's tariffs on Chinese ships, emphasizing the increase on consumer costs.
President Trump talking about tariffs from some countries, potentially it could increase the cost of goods. So increases our transportation costs could increase the cost of goods. President Trump is now also talking about levying a tariff or fine on Chinese ships. So if your goods just happen to be in a ship that was manufactured in China, I think they're talking about $1 million as the penalty every time that ship calls on a U.S. port.
He explained how this could affect the cost of goods imported from countries like Brazil.
So if a Chinese-made ship is leaving Brazil with beef, going up to Miami, to then bring that beef to the Caribbean, it means that you then have that Chinese ship docking there and that penalty being applied, which means that they're going to pass it on now to us down here, who are the consumers.
Brantley acknowledged President Trump's prerogative to act in America's best interests.
President Trump is making decisions in the best interest as he sees it for America. That's what leaders are supposed to do. I have no argument with him doing what he says he's doing to, as he puts it, make America great again.
However, he cautioned against allowing these policies to impoverish the region.
But in making America great again, the question is whether or not we're going to allow that to impoverish the rest of us.
He called for a proactive approach to forging new relationships, establishing the role of CARICOM in leading this effort.
And so we now need, if sovereignty is to mean anything, it is for us now to use it to do the very things that you are suggesting, Mr. Barr, to engage in new relationships. I believe that the CARICOM, again, is the focal point. St. Kitts Nevis on its own doesn't present much of a market.
The Premier suggested CARICOM should
be mounting missions to Latin America, should be talking to Brazil and Argentina, those countries that are large producers in Latin America, and saying, hey, how can we get?
He also proposed engaging with shipping companies to explore direct routes from Latin America and Central America, bypassing the need to route goods through the United States.
There may well be shipping companies in Latin America that we don't even know. Because on here we're accustomed to what I think Bournemouth and Tropical, those are the ones that we're accustomed to. But what about the possibility of coming direct across to us? Rather than going north to come back south, just come direct to us. Right? And let us now talk about trade. Let us talk about people.
Premier Brantley highlighted the progress in facilitating a visa-free travel to Latin America for St. Kitts and Nevis citizens.
One of the things that we achieved, again, I'm very proud of, as foreign minister, is that every single country in Latin America, with the exception of Mexico, St. Kitts and Nevis can go to visa-free. Everyone.
He stressed the need to improve airline connectivity, questioning why airlines like Copa and Avianca do not serve St. Kitts.
Copa, for example, is a leading airline within Panama, Panamanian Airlines. Why can't Copa be flying to St. Kitts? It's not a long flight. Probably 2 hours, same distance if you're going to Miami. Right? Why can't we get Avianca, I think it's called, to come here? We need to start with a conversation.
He drew a parallel to revenue guarantees provided to British Airways, American Airlines, and JetBlue, suggesting similar arrangements could be offered to airlines from Nigeria, Ethiopia, or Panama. Acknowledging the importance of linguistic skills for enhanced trade relations, Premier Brantley emphasized that while bilingualism and trilingualism are beneficial, technological advancements provide immediate solutions.
Because if we're going to move in those directions, we need people who are bilingual and trilingual. We need people who speak Spanish. I think Brazil, let's speak Portuguese, right? We will need people. But in this day and age, I think that's even secondary. That will come. I don't know that that's a priority because I see people now with their phone having full conversations in foreign languages because the man just talking to his phone in English and the phone says whatever in Portuguese to the person. So there are apps now that will help us.
He urged local businesses to explore opportunities in Latin America, encouraging companies like Rams and Value Mart to
go and find out what kind of food you all have available here. And rather than sending it up north, to send it back to us, send it directly to us.
Brantley stated that President Trump's policies
will provide a catalyst, I think that's the word you use, and will force us to adapt and to do things in a different way. And I welcome that.
He reiterated that the United States remains an important partner, but emphasized the need to diversify trade relationships.
Again, I am never going to suggest we abandon the United States. It's our partner, it's been our partner for years. But putting all of our eggs in that basket just doesn't make sense for us anymore. We need to pivot. We need to adjust. And I see Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Asia. Those are the areas we need to pivot to.
He pointed to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's investment in St. Kitts and Nevis geothermal project as an example of the potential benefits of expanding diplomatic ties.
And I think it gave me tremendous satisfaction to see that it is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a new diplomatic ally, that came to our aid in terms of geothermal. Not England, not Canada, not the EU, not America, but Saudi Arabia.
He also noted Barbados' decision to open a high commission in Ghana, highlighting the growing recognition of the importance of closer ties with Africa.
So Barbados has seen the value in tighter connections. And so Barbados has now opened a high commission in Ghana.
Brantley advocated for a more substantial OECS presence in Africa, suggesting the establishment of joint embassies in Addis Ababa and South Africa. Ultimately, Premier Brantley's message was a call for political will and foresight, urging St. Kitts and Nevis and its regional partners to pursue trade diversification and strengthen ties with emerging markets proactively.
But as I said, Mr. Bart, it needs a political will, and we need to see the value in it. And it's sad to say that we may be forced to go in that direction, because I don't think it should require force. It should require foresight. It should require thoughtfulness. But I believe that's the direction that we have to head into.
Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. St. Kitts and Nevis is poised to become a central trade hub between the Caribbean and West Africa after signing a Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) with the Nigeria-based Green Economic Zone (GEZ) Special Economic Zone Management Company. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, emphasized the significance of this agreement during the roundtable broadcast on April 2nd, 2025, stating that it paves the way for developing a state-of-the-art agro-hub warehouse and logistics center in St. Kitts and Nevis. The ambitious project aims to establish the African Caribbean Atlantic Cooperation (ACAC), a landmark initiative designed to facilitate the direct movement of goods between the west coast of Africa and the Caribbean. Dr. Drew said this undertaking will enhance trade by exporting agricultural products from St. Kitts and Nevis. Further solidifying this partnership, a special Nigerian team will attend the upcoming Investment Gateway Summit in May 2025 in St. Kitts and Nevis. This summit will serve as a platform to continue the development of this initiative. The Prime Minister envisions St. Kitts and Nevis as a central point of trade, explaining,
"The hub is going to be built on St. Kitts and Nevis, and it's to receive, for example, goods and services, goods really from Western Africa that will come into this hub. And then from this hub, we can distribute throughout the Caribbean."
He further elaborated on the two-way nature of this trade relationship, noting,
"And then what we want to do is to collect from St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean in terms of goods to go back to West Africa, so that that hub is a logistic, so it arranges, of course, the logistics of movement, and it's a hub where you can have receive and send."
Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources and Cooperatives, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Sports and the Creative Economy, the Honorable Samuel Duggins, echoed the Prime Minister's enthusiasm, emphasizing the historical context of this alliance. Duggins stated that the MOU
really embodies trade between both regions. What we endeavor to do through this MOU is connect or reconnect what has been a historical route of trade.
Referencing the Great Triangle trade route, Minister Duggins explained,
"We are now reimagining that, and we have dubbed it the Transatlantic Bridge, coming off of the idea of the transatlantic trade. And that transatlantic bridge will facilitate trade with the continent of Africa into the Western Hemisphere, St. Kitts being at the center of that trade, as the hub of that trade in the Western Hemisphere."
Recognizing the challenges of freight costs, Minister Duggins highlighted the strategy of establishing direct trade routes.
What we are doing is connecting direct trade routes from Africa to St. Kitts direct to Africa. And not just via sea, which is one of the main areas that we are looking at, but we are looking at air freight as well.
He also pointed to the unique status of the economic zone in Nigeria.
The economic zone, it's almost like a sovereign within Nigeria. And so they are governed by their own tax and trade laws. And we are now able to conduct business with them and them with us.
Prime Minister Drew emphasized the potential market size in Africa, which has over 1 billion people.
If the Caribbean were to just get 1% of that market, we'll be able to sell everything that we have.
He also highlighted the strategic advantage of the established transatlantic route, noting,
"We already calculated that to move things from West Africa to the Caribbean is about 15 days to get across. The Atlantic, that route is well known."
Minister Duggins underscored the timelines of this initiative, particularly in light of recent trade developments.
Most of us woke up to news just this morning about tariffs being placed on the region through America. The sad part is we have a huge trade deficit with America, where most of what we import comes through America. And now we are seeing we are being punished for even that. This is the right time for One Africa. This is the right time to reconnect with who we are and where we are from. And I think this is a historic moment.
Concluded Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources and Cooperatives, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Sports and the Creative Economy, the Honorable Samuel Duggins. Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew addressed the nation on April 2nd, 2025 via the roundtable broadcast, tackling concerns surrounding the resurgence of Trump's trade policies and their potential ramifications for St. Kitts and Nevis. The Prime Minister acknowledged the widespread unease caused by the looming threat of tariffs on imports from major trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China.
What you're saying is absolutely correct. If these tariffs hit, there's hardly any country in the world that can escape. Not even the large economies can really escape. Not China, not Canada, not Mexico.
Dr. Drew emphasized the government's proactive approach, highlighting ongoing dialogue with the U.S. to secure a carve-out for St. Kitts and Nevis.
So our argument with the U.S. is that we want a carve-out because with us, you have a significant surplus of $54 billion.
Drawing on factual data, he contrasted the nation's trade deficit of over $750 million with the U.S. against the surpluses of other countries targeted by the tariffs. The Federation and other territories have been hit with a 10% tariff. He explained that the U.S. argument was that
these countries have surpluses with us and it's unfair to us, fair enough. What about the countries like us that have deficits with you?
He hoped this appeal resonated, noting that the Secretary of State pledged to relay the concern to Washington.
I think that question was received, and I think when the Secretary of State was in the Caribbean, he said he will take that back to Washington.
Beyond governmental advocacy, the Prime Minister stressed the importance of public awareness and collective action.
The second aspect to it is to educate our people. Our people need to know. This is not government dependent, as some people want to make it out to be. This is beyond government.
He cautioned that tariffs could impact prices, potentially requiring adjustments in consumption patterns.
We might be called upon to change what we consume, what type of services we access.
Adding that consumers may need to consider alternative, more affordable goods from different regions. In line with this call for self-reliance, Dr. Drew outlined plans to bolster domestic food production to
farm 100 acres immediately. And before the year done, we want to have about 300 acres under production of food for our people.
This initiative would transition workers into agriculture, increasing productivity and food security.
Each 10 acres is going to take 30 people, 100 acres is going to take about 300 people, 200 acres is going to take 600 people, 300 acres is going to take 900 people. That's producing jobs for 900 people, producing food for our people.
Recognizing the need to diversify trade routes and attract investment, the Prime Minister highlighted efforts to explore new partnerships and sectors.
Open up new trade routes, such as to Nigeria, for example, or the African continent, seeking to open trade routes in northern Brazil.
He also mentioned ongoing discussions with
a company called Evergreen, sponsored by the Afrexim Bank, to invest, discussions going on with respect to investments into aquaculture or fish, and then discussions into chicken production as well.
He noted the strides made in local egg production supported by a domestic hatchery and plans for a slaughterhouse and animal production in Bayfoods, developed in collaboration with Southern University. The partnership with Southern University, a historically black university from Louisiana, was further emphasized.
We signed an MOU with them. Not only that Southern University is helping us with our animal production, along with Ross University. And the cannabis industry is expected to create a whole new industry.
These collaborations, combined with tourism enhancements, including the development of Ritz-Carlton, and infrastructure developments, form part of a multifaceted strategy to fortify the economy against external shocks. The Prime Minister hoped that
the new reality in the world doesn't affect the investment. It's a new reality.
Dr. Drew reaffirmed the commitment to energy security, mentioning the geothermal project on Nevis.
We reach a point that has never ever been reached in our history with respect to geothermal. And we are going to open up the bids document in May. The Green Climate Fund was here. And the head of the Green Climate Fund said, I know you all want to do 5 wells, but we want you all to do the full 9 wells. And get rid and have full energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. Do you know what that will do for us? And we're going to open up the bidding document in May. I know that there are going to be challenges. But I think as the leader and the party in power and with a team, we need to start to put things in place so that there could be hope. There's a lot of hope. And we are not going to sit back and watch, whatever is happening and countries making their decisions or complain about their decisions. I'm not going to sit here and complain about the decisions that the President of the United States makes now. He says he's making them in the interest of his country. How can I be vexed with that?
He noted that the Green Climate Fund was pushing St. Kitts and Nevis to expand geothermal production to provide full energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. The Prime Minister concluded by reiterating the need for self-reliance and unity, invoking the words of Marcus Garvey.
So what are we going to do for ourselves? That is the question that is being asked. We have to do for self. That's what Marcus Garvey said. When he came here in the 1930s, Say, do for self and connect to Africa.
He challenged the nation to embrace this philosophy.
It's almost as if he knew the time would come when we will be left in a deep ocean to swim. And if we don't reconnect with our people, we'll have no.
He urged citizens, economists, and experts to engage in independent analysis and open dialogue, emphasizing that enlightenment is important. Dr. Drew called on all people, not just the government.
Because without the ideas, without the enlightenment, our people can be lost.
Dr. Drew argued that St. Kitts and Nevis can only navigate the challenges ahead and secure a prosperous future for all through collective understanding and action. St. Kitts and Nevis is setting ambitious goals for a green energy transition, aiming to produce 50% of their electricity from renewable sources by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Jonathan Kelly, Skellex Project and a renewable energy manager in the Energy Transition Unit, highlighted the importance of this shift.
The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the government and the people, were on a pathway for attaining a sustainable island state. And part of one of the pillars, as already mentioned this morning, is the green energy transition. And this has to be understood not just from the standpoint of emission reductions, but also from the standpoint of energy security, decoupling ourselves from the over-dependency on imported energy in the form of fossil fuels.
Currently, the Federation relies heavily on diesel fuel for electricity generation, with
approximately 98% of the electricity being generated in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis is from the form of utilizing diesel fuel that is converted in these generators to provide electricity.
A recent trip to Taiwan provided valuable insights into building resilient energy systems. Kelly explained that the delegation interacted with experts in Taiwan's energy sector, observing
how they're able to build resilient systems, how they're able to have systems that are able to allow for the integration of distributed and centralized solar and battery energy systems. We're able to visit some of those technology providers and we're able to have that exposure.
He further noted a comment from a St. Kitts and Nevis student studying in Taiwan.
We have noted that during typhoons, the power stays on in Taiwan. And they are aware that when we're here back in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, sometimes it's just a tropical storm and we have island-wide outage.
This observation underscores the need for strategies to build very resilient grids in St. Kitts and Nevis. The discussion with the Taiwan Power Company focused on these strategies, and they aim to establish memoranda of understanding to progress the electricity and energy sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, Minister of Foreign Affairs et al., shared tangible outcomes expected from the Taiwan trip during a press conference on March 28, 2025.
We speak of the need to have cheaper electricity. One of the immediate things that will happen is at least 2 investors have indicated their interest in providing solar energy panels constructed here using the technology that we witnessed ourselves when we visited the appropriate factory in Taiwan.
This initiative aims to bring renewable energy directly to residential homes.
We have therefore looked at this as immediately returning to bringing renewable energy in the form of solar energy on the rooftops of residential homes, so that we would be able to, with the support of Skellex, have domestic production of solar energy.
Furthermore, excess energy generated domestically could be fed back into the national grid. To ensure grid stability with the integration of renewable energy, investment in smart grid technology is crucial.
The importance of artificial intelligence, ensuring that there's a smart system that will now operate within Skellex, so that any feedback to the national grid of Skellex will not destabilize the entire system.
He also highlighted the need for a grid that can withstand threats from natural disasters.
When the hurricanes would pass, etc., there is a need to stabilize the grid. And so there is going to be investment in ensuring that the national grid is a smart national grid so that it can detect the threats to its instability and shut down accordingly as would be directed from the intelligence gathered from the appropriate machines.
The pursuit of a sustainable island state also involves investing in human capital.
The increasing in the number of scholarships we demanded and received on the spot. An increased number of scholarships in certain specific areas that the government believe is absolutely necessary for us to churn out new trained minds in those areas that we have identified to be critical to assist us to attain the sustainable island state that we speak of.
These scholarships will focus on critical areas necessary for achieving sustainable development in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, addressed concerns raised by the United States regarding the Cuban Medical Brigade program following U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's recent tour of the Caribbean region. The Premier's comments came during his press conference on March 31, 2025, reflecting on Rubio's statements made during the Jamaica leg of his tour. Premier Brantley emphasized the importance of a measured and intelligent response to the United States' concerns.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio came. I think his coming was very important. As you may know, Ms. Budgeon, I've been an advocate for us to respond to the United States, not emotionally, but intelligently. And I have said that CARICOM, as a region, needs to take the lead in fashioning a response that's nimble, a response that's flexible, a response that's sensible. And a lot of the saber rattling and the emotional outbursts that I've heard are really unnecessary, because at the end of the day, they don't move the needle. So, I am happy that Secretary of State Rubio came.
The Premier highlighted that Rubio's press conference in Jamaica was particularly insightful.
Because in that press conference, Secretary of State Rubio pointed out that the concern that America had with the Cuban Medical Brigade was that they are saying that in some countries it operates as if it's forced labor. Because according to him, the Cuban government holds the people's passports and the monies are paid directly to the Cuban government, which then decides what it will pay to the workers. That is not the program in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Brantley expressed his satisfaction that Rubio acknowledged Jamaica's compliance with international labor standards.
And I felt quite pleased when Secretary of State Rubio was able to say that Jamaica is not in violation because that is not the program as it's administered in Jamaica.
He affirmed that St. Kitts and Nevis operates under a similar framework.
Now, having seen our response to the United States query about this program, we are in the same position as Jamaica, meaning that when Cuban medical professionals come here, they are employed to us, either the NIA or the federal government. They are paid at the same scale as our local doctors and medical professionals.
The Premier clarified that Cuban medical professionals in St. Kitts and Nevis are treated equitably.
Nobody's taking anybody's passport from them. They're allowed to open their bank accounts. They get their money every month on payday like everybody else here. And they're required to pay from that whatever taxes, social security that everybody else pays here. Put differently, they're subject to the same laws, the same benefits, the same responsibilities as medical professionals here in St. Kitts and Nevis who are local.
Brantley emphasized St. Kitts and Nevis' commitment to international norms.
St. Kitts and Nevis adheres to the ILO standards. We adhere to all of the standards. We are, in fact, a partner in the international community in fighting anything like slavery, forced labor, or the illegal migration. We are not into people smuggling. St. Kitts and Nevis is not in that. We are law-abiding, responsible member of the international community. And if I understood Secretary of State Rubio, we therefore ought not to be part of their concern in relation to Cuban medical professionals.
Premier Brantley reiterated the benefits afforded to Cuban medical staff in Nevis.
I can tell you, for the nurses and doctors employed here in Nevis, they get all the benefits, they get all the perks, they get everything that our local doctors would get. In fact, some of them get more than our local doctors because some of them are specialists. So, I would want to also make that very clear. So I think that that was very useful.
Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. St. Kitts and Nevis is experiencing a significant decrease in major crimes, particularly homicides, according to Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. During his press conference on March 31st, Brantley addressed crime and violence statistics for the first 3 months of 2025, expressing positive sentiments about the progress made.
The fact that I've had the third press conference for the year, this one, and it's the first time that the issue of crime and security is coming up, I think is a very good sign. It tells me that we're making progress.
Brantley congratulated Superintendent Carty and his team in Nevis, acknowledging their contributions to the improved crime statistics. He also commended Commissioner of Police James Sutton, noting his past service in Nevis.
And I want Ms. Hewlett to go on record to congratulate Mr. Carty and his team in Nevis. Of course, our Commissioner of Police. I tease him all the time because I tell him he was put on the path to Commissioner from his work here on the island of Nevis. He would have served here with us and done an excellent job. And we are seeing certainly a reduction in crime and criminality.
The Premier highlighted a joint cabinet meeting of the Federal Cabinet and the NIA Cabinet held at the Park Hyatt, where the Commissioner of Police presented encouraging data.
And in that presentation, the Commissioner pointed out that we have had now the months of January, February, and March without a single homicide. And he pointed out that this is the first time in 23 years that that has happened. The first time in 23 years that we've had the first quarter of the year without a homicide. But in fact, when you look at the statistics, I think the last homicide we had was in October of last year. So when you look at the period of time, it's about 5 months that we have not had a homicide.
Brantley emphasized the collective effort of various entities to achieve these results. He thanked the Minister of National Security, the Prime Minister, the police force, Wakely Daniel, community leaders, church leaders, schools, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Premier acknowledged the NIA's financial support to the police and army in Nevis, despite having no budgetary responsibilities for national security.
Mr. Wakely Daniel, I must mention him because he's our primary liaison with the police and security forces. The NIA that I lead, because while we have no budget responsibility and no line item in our budget, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars each year supporting the police and supporting the army that's based here in Nevis. So we contribute as well. And of course, our community leaders, our church leaders, our schools, and our people. Because as much as we would like to say that we are preventing crime, we understand that crime comes from people. It is people who commit crime. And so part of what we need to do is to reach the hearts and minds of our people, especially our young men, and to say to them that there is a better way.
While celebrating the progress, Premier Brantley cautioned against complacency.
I am not going to stand here today and pretend that the battle has been won. But I think all of us can admit that there has been tremendous progress in terms of where we were and where we now are.
He expressed hope that the country is building a new norm where the absence of homicides is once again the standard. The Premier addressed a recent spike in larceny in Nevis, particularly in the Gingerland area. He explained that much of this was attributed to petty theft, including incidents involving school children and the theft of flower pots. However, he assured that the police have intensified patrols in Gingerland, which has resulted in a cessation of such activity.
So these are little matters that even though, because everyone is recorded. So if I went into Best Buy in Gingerland and I took up 3 different things, I think it's recorded as 3 different. It's not one larceny. You get 3 for that one act. So that's how they've been doing it. But the police have indicated that in the last 3 weeks, they have intensified patrols and presence in Gingerland. And we've seen none of that activity in Gingerland since that time. So I'm grateful for that.
Despite the increase in larceny, Premier Brantley highlighted the significant absence of major violent crimes in the Federation.
So no homicides, homicide 0 from a firearm, other homicides, because they tend to classify them differently, 0, non-fatal shootings 0, So this is really unprecedented. It's the best results we've seen in nearly 2.5 decades.
He further noted that in the Federation there were 0 non-fatal shootings and only 5 robberies for the first 3 months of 2025. Sexual assault cases remain low, with only 6 reported across the Federation for the entire period. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force remain committed to ensuring the safety and security of St. Kitts and Nevis and will continue to adapt its strategies to address the challenges of crime fighting in 2025.
Anguilla boasts the first accredited aviation rescue training facility in the Caribbean, and fire officers in St. Kitts and Nevis have an opportunity to build their skills and gain certification there. Having completed an international audit by the Joint Oil Fire Forum, the Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services training programs became accredited. The Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services offer one-day programs, 2 one-week-long programs, and an intended 4-week-long fire and rescue program. The training site features newly developed training props such as a pressure-fed aircraft mock-up and a confined space crawling unit, highlighting the importance of training for every possibility. At the Government of Anguilla press conference on Monday, March 31, 2025, Jose Vanterpool, Minister of Infrastructure, Communications, Utilities, Housing, IT and E-Government Services, said the facility has begun to receive trainees from overseas. Whilst discussions are being had with authorities in St. Kitts and Nevis and other neighboring territories.
The JOF certified training programs are now offered locally, attracting regional fire and rescue professionals to come to Anguilla and to get certified. So as a practical example of this, at the moment, there are currently 45 firefighters from the BVI Airport Authority that are currently undergoing training here in Anguilla as we speak. There are also ongoing discussions with St. Bart's, St. Martin, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Antigua and Barbuda for future training programs. Myself and the Honorable Cordell Richardson would have been able to attend one of the live burn sessions, training sessions, and the feedback that we got from the firefighters from other jurisdictions to BVI was truly commendable. In fact, they were saying that they had a better experience at the training facility here than they did in the UK.
Authorities in St. Kitts and Nevis confirmed with WINN FM that discussions are ongoing regarding training for fire officials. It is anticipated that all trainees would gain valuable insights into the communication and coordination required when attending to emergencies.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce is warning that the current international geopolitical climate could have a significant impact on residents across the Federation as new U.S. tariffs are set to take effect on April 2. U.S. President Donald Trump has already imposed substantial tariffs on goods imported from China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. These tariffs will apply once goods reach U.S. soil. Now, President Trump has threatened to impose a $1.5 million tax on Chinese-made vessels docking in the United States. Given St. Kitts and Nevis' heavy reliance on the U.S. for food and other commodities, there is growing concern that this move could present serious economic challenges for the Federation's residents. This issue was recently addressed by Trevor Blake, president of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Commerce.
That could have a very, very heavy adverse impact on prices. Everything that is imported into the Federation is either, well, most things I should say, is either transshipped or through the U.S. So that is of significant concern to all of us, and it should be.
Stakeholders throughout the region are currently discussing the matter, and efforts are underway to assess its broader implications.
There are a number of fronts it is being addressed. The shipping companies like Tropical, etc. They are lobbying the U.S. government. The private sector organization, the CARICOM private sector organization, is having a major consultation on that. We at the Chamber are engaging our membership on that. So we are seeking to address that on a number of fronts. We trust that good sense will prevail, but because I don't think there's a way around it. So unless that is somewhat rolled back, it would have a very, very deleterious impact on our cost of living, because the $1 million per call or 1.5 million a call is significant, and that price, those fees would have to be passed on to the importers of the goods and further passed on to the public. So it's something that we're hoping that we could have rolled back.
As the situation unfolds, it remains to be seen whether the U.S. administration will make any adjustments after further consultations with international partners.
If I may address the question you posed about guarantees with regard to cost of living, we cannot at this point give any guarantees of that. As we know, the costs of the goods, we import almost everything, and the cost of the goods is built up from the cost, insurance, and freight. Freight will be impacted by the measure if the U.S. proceeds with it. So that means that is an additional cost. And, on top of that, the duties and everything is calculated on the CIF values. So we can't, at this point, say that there will not be any increases. What we will say is we will try to see to do whatever we could to prevent that measure from being imposed. So whatever influences we could bring to bear on the U.S. authorities so that imposition is rolled back. We will certainly do all that it could, because it's going to affect everything.
Commissioner of Police James Sutton has once again called for urgent action following 2 traffic fatalities in the Whitegate area within the span of a week. The most recent incident occurred on March 27th when 15-year-old Kaliquan Woodley of Sandy Point succumbed to injuries sustained in a crash. According to a police statement issued over the weekend, the accident happened between 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Woodley was traveling on a motor scooter from Date Bay to St. Paul's when he collided with a vehicle. After the initial impact, police said he fell onto the roadway and was struck by another passing vehicle. Commissioner Sutton expressed deep concern over the rising numbers of fatalities.
On behalf of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, I extend my heartfelt condolences to his grieving family, as well as to the families of those who have lost loved ones in road accidents this year. No words can truly ease the pain of such loss, but rest assured that our thoughts and most fervent prayers are with you during this difficult time. As a nation, we must come together to support those who are mourning, while also taking decisive action to prevent further tragedies. 4 fatal accidents since the start of this year is 4 too many. Just a few short months ago, in December 2024, we all bore witness to 8 persons dying as a result of traffic accidents. These losses should serve as a heavy, sobering reminder of the need for all road users to exercise caution, patience, and responsibility.
Sutton also confirmed that Woodley was the son of a police officer.
I urge every motorist, every cyclist, and every pedestrian to obey our traffic laws, adhere to speed limits, and to maintain a high level of situational awareness while traversing our roadways. Pay attention. Reckless and negligent driving not only endangers your own life, but also the lives of passengers and other road users.
The tragedy follows another deadly accident on March 22nd, which claimed the life of 18-year-old Shanice Harvey and left 8 others injured. According to police reports, the accident occurred between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. in the Whitegate area between Dade Bay and St. Paul's. The driver lost control of the vehicle, which then collided with a tree and overturned.
Our officers will continue to enforce the law and to do their best to ensure the safety of everyone on our roads, but enforcement alone is not enough. Each of us has a duty to make responsible choices behind the wheel. There is no point in leaving home or work and driving at literal breakneck speeds to get to your desired destination. Though some of us may appear to defy injury and death by repeatedly breaking the traffic laws, do not forget the old saying, dog luck ain't cat luck. What appears to work well for one may not work at all for you. It is, therefore, always in your best interest to do the right thing, because only then do you have the greatest chance of staying alive. Fate forbid something should happen, or staying safe altogether.
In response to the rising number of accidents, the police force has ramped up education campaigns, stop and search operations, and other initiatives to improve road safety. Traffic Sergeant Sophia Henry recently urged drivers to show more care and consideration on the roadway, reminding them to respect other users.
You were listening to the Week in Review here on WINN FM 98.9. Thank you for listening and have a productive week.